In this lesson, we'll continue working with lines in AutoCAD. All right, so let's continue our discussion on working with lines, and we'll kind of go into different other ways that we can get the type of line work, the angles and the distances we want. But we're also going to look at how we can select line work and deal with things like that, and we'll also do a little bit of modification. So let's start with some selecting. I want to kind of clear off some of the lines here. Now, there's a few ways you can actually select things in AutoCAD. Now, when it comes to these lines, as an overall rule, I think of a left-right rule. There's a certain behavior when I select things going from the left to the right, and there's also a certain behavior on how selection happens when I'm going from the right to the left. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. So if I wanted to get multiple items, if I come to this area here, and let's say I wanted to select these two lines, I can click and click, right? Just like we learned our last lesson. But what if I wanted to quickly get those guys? So I can start going from right to left will actually give me that type of a behavior. So I can click and I'll generate this window here, and you'll know you're doing it the right way because it'll be that green window. And now I've just selected those two elements. So any element that's within that window, I'll show you again. I'm just going to click and go. So because of that corner that's in that within that window, the entire element will be selected. Now let's do it the other way. I'm going to click and create the box around this area and then try to highlight, and you'll notice nothing happened. That's because the difference between doing it in left or right is when you're doing it in this direction, you're not required to have the entire element within that window to be selected. Now if I do it this way, if I wanted to get both of those walls in there, I would actually have to have that entire element within there. So whereas of how it looks right now, when I highlight that element, you'll notice that wall just glows a little bit. The one that's entirely in that window, that's the one that will be selected. The other two running horizontally will not. So I'll click that and it automatically selects that. It's real basic, but it's real helpful, especially once you start getting a lot of line work and maybe you're working with hatches or doing something like that. You don't want to have to click on each little individual line. It's nice to be able to select many. Now that's working with our little rectangular selection window here. And that's just by clicking and then clicking to the end point. What happens if I hold down my mouse button? Well, you get a different behavior. So I can hold down my mouse, and what happens is my left click, I can now select things with this arch or the sweeping selective method. See how that worked? I can come here, click, and hold it down, and I can kind of sweep around and highlight everything within there. Easy as that. Now, that same behavior applies when you're going the other direction. So you can see the color of that window. I know that selecting this way, only the elements that are totally inside that window are going to be selected. Now, there's other elements that are chopped off. Those won't be. Perfect. You can see these lines are selected. So there's two ways, left and right, keep in mind. But there's also another way within that, and that's holding down the left click button and just simply clicking it to get the square. So really simple, but really important, especially when you start getting into more complex things in your drawing. So I'm going to get rid of everything here. I'm going to hit my erase, and we'll start fresh again with some more line work. So now that we have our units set, we know how to select things, get rid of things. I know how to set my orthos so I can get a lot of right angles. What if I want to create a basic box? So we'll go about doing that. So I can click my line tool. I can click my first start point. Now, you'll notice we're not in ortho mode. Now, I'll show you why being in ortho mode is going to come in handy. Now, if you don't want to stay in ortho mode, you can click on this polar. And what it does is it'll snap at every 90-degree interval, but you still get that nice smooth movement. So that comes in handy if you're working with 90-degree angles, 45 degrees and whatnot. So if I did want to draw a square or rectangle, by selecting that, I can now snap in the right directions that I need to go. So if I want to move up, I'll just move my cursor to where it moves up, and I'll specify a distance. So we'll say we want this first one to be 10 feet 6 inches. So I'll type in 10. I'll use my area there to type in feet. Then we'll do 6. Then I'll hold down shift and I'll type in my parentheses. So you'll know parentheses there, is inches and the other one is feet. So we'll type in enter and it moved it 10 feet 6 inches. But I can't see what's going on. That's just because I need to look at my extents. So I can click on top and it'll automatically kind of activate that extents for me. So now I know that I created that 10 foot by 6 inch wall or line in this case. So I could do it in this direction and you'll notice it automatically snaps there because we have our polar snaps on. So we'll do the same thing here. We want this to be a perfect square. We can. We'll do 10 feet 6 inches in this direction. Enter. Easy as that. Again, 10 feet 6 inches going down in that direction. Enter. Now I can do 10 feet 6 inches going that way, or I can type in C for close, hit enter, and it'll automatically close that out, making sure that I got my right angles there. So what we did is we just created our first square using the line command and using our snaps here to actually get that to happen. Now let's say I want it to be, I want it to snap at different intervals. I don't just want it to go at 90 degrees. The cool thing is I can go to this drop down and I can go at any of these guys here. So right now it's actually set to 45. So every 45 degrees, it's going to snap in place. I could switch that to every 30 degrees if I wanted to. So now if we were to draw a line, every 30 degrees, it'll actually snap in place. And I can tell because two things happen. You look at this screen here in the orange, you'll see the distance of that line. That's the actual distance from start to end. But if you look just to the right, you'll see 30 degrees. That tells me I'm going 30 degrees. So now I can either, since it's snapping, I can snap this guy into place 30 degrees. Easy as that, right? Same thing here. I can keep the ball rolling. Let's say I wanted to snap this back up 30. Easy stuff. I can do that. But let's say we didn't want to use our snaps and we actually turned off those polar snaps and we're just kind of working freely like this. I can use the direction I want. I can specify the distance and the direction. So in this case, let's say we wanted to draw this line, we'll say at 90 degrees and I wanted it to be, a 15-foot line. So right now in that orange, you'll see the distance of that line according to that starting point to this end point, 12 foot 9 1/16. I want it to be 15 feet. So I'll type in 15 feet, but I won't press anything else. Now I'll hit tab. Tab will automatically get me, highlight that area where my degrees are, right? So now I can type in 90. I'll hit enter, and we've just created a wall or a line that's at the distance we specified and also the direction. So that's how you can go about doing that. So basically typing in your distance, hitting the tab button, typing in the numeric value for your angle, and that's how you go about getting that done. So those are two really helpful tools working with either your polar snap or how you can actually use your keyboard to type in the direction and angle and distance that you want to work with. So in the next lesson, we'll continue working with some more drafting tools for lines and also working with some modification tools.